I have not finished the testimony from day 12. Yuri Buchanik's a fucking piece of work and he deserves a number of videos, and I will make them. I have some other questions and I need to say some things out loud. And this one's about Brian Higgins. There's a couple things I can't answer about Brian Higgins. Brian Higgins went to the Canton PD, where he has an office, by the way. So he's an ATF agent, but he's allowed to have an office inside the Canton Police Department. He went there at 1:30 in the morning. So he left the party at 34 Fairview, went to the Canton PD. He says that it was to do some paperwork. He went there, he went into his office, he did some paperwork, and then he allegedly left and went home. Really don't hear much from Higgins again until the butt dials with Brian Albert at 2:27 in the morning or whatever. Okay. And then he's magically back at the Albert house, sitting at the dining room table the next morning when Lank comes in to question them family style. I think there's a number of theories that people have come up with as to why Higgins went to the police station. I heard once, and I don't know if it was his testimony or if I saw it in a police report somewhere, where he'd said he also needed, like, they were going to start plowing the streets or plowing the parking lots, and he needed to move some vehicles. Like, there was some vehicles that were incorrectly parked, and I don't know if those were like his work vehicle and his personal vehicle or something like that, but he made it sound like he also needed to move some vehicles around. We know that by 1:30 in the morning that Karen was already blowing up John's phone, right? She started leaving those voicemails the minute she drove away. So, and she's calling. I made a video yesterday. God, the days are blurring. I made a video previous to this one. Fuck knows when it was. But she was calling him like every 6 minutes or something on average. So at some point, they're probably thinking, what if she calls 911? Like, what if she comes to a conclusion that something bad happened to John and she calls the police? So I'm wondering if Higgins goes to the police department, and of course they're like, hey, where have you been? I was over at Albert's. How was it? Nobody was there. Sucked. Whatever. Like, is he there to defuse? So if she calls Good or whoever's on the desk that night, if she calls the station and says, my boyfriend is missing, Higgins be like, well, that's weird. He wasn't at Albert's. We saw him at Waterfall, but he never made it to Albert's. So is he there to control a situation? Some have said he went there to get a Faraday bag to bring back to the house to put John's cell phone in a Faraday bag so no signals could go to John's phone. Judging from the technology people who said that there was still activity on his phone kind of throughout that early morning, and then even after his body was recovered, it wasn't properly handled. No one put it on airplane mode. No one turned off the Wi-Fi, and it doesn't seem like anybody put it in a Faraday bag. But I'm also wondering if maybe he went in to get the plow schedule. Because, yeah, again, I keep going back to, I don't think their intention was to frame Karen from the beginning. I think their intention was toss him in the street and act like he got hit by a plow. And no one would have questioned that. Everyone would be like, well, he's drunk and he just wandered in the street and got hit by a plow. Poor dude. What a terrible way to go. And I don't think anybody would have questioned it. We wouldn't have even had a trial. But you got to make sure the plows are in your neighborhood before you toss the body out there, right? So I'm wondering if he went to the station to determine the plow schedule. Usually right before a big storm, and I don't live in the Boston area, but I've lived in other places when big storms are coming. And remember, this is the biggest storm they've had in like a half century. This is a big MFing storm. So all of their emergency management procedures would have been in place. They would have called in subcontractor plow, like extra plows, extra salt trucks. They would have been absolutely prepared. So the police department would know who's where, when are they starting, what neighborhoods are they in. The police would have known that. So I feel like Higgins went to the police station to get the plow schedule so that he could make sure that the first plow was going to come by. The plows were going to be in this neighborhood at 2:30 in the morning. So go ahead and go anytime after that, right? If they're going to toss a body out on the curb, they need to do it after the plow has come by, right? That's why I think he went to the police station. That might make no sense to anybody, but to me, in my head, that's what makes sense. But here's the part that bothers me. We're going to hear from medical examiners. I'm trying desperately to remember. I got to go back and look at my notes of what Scorty Bella said last year, but I seem to recall John lost a lot of blood. My logic tells me it had to happen in the house, in the basement, in the garage, someplace in that house. There's a lot of blood left because the blood isn't out on the snow. The bleeding had subsided before the body made it to the yard, because there would have been blood all over in the snow. It would have been seeped into the grass. We're talking a lot of blood. If Higgins was involved in a fight, if Higgins was in any way involved in the moving or covering up or the maybe even rendering aid, attempt to render aid to John in the beginning, if Higgins was anywhere near this, I feel like he would have had John's blood on him. And he's one of my top 3 suspects, right? So I've always said this was Brian Higgins, Brian Albert, Colin Albert. I've always said it's those 3. It's those 3. They did something to John. I don't think Brian Higgins, even in all of his drunken audacity, even in his chest pounding, I am ATF, don't fuck with me attitude, I do not think he would have shown up at the Canton Police Department with somebody else's blood all over him. Maybe he washed up before he went in. I don't know. Was it maybe Matt McCabe? You know, maybe it was Colin and Brian only. Maybe Higgins was just a watcher. I've always thought he was involved, because why is he working so hard to help them cover it up? He must have done something to John in order to feel like he is culpable and therefore has to help in the cover up. But it could be that he was just there, like he saw it and he's a witness, and maybe that's why, you know, there was a point where everybody else was getting federal subpoenas. He wasn't. He had kind of stopped talking to Brian Albert, and Kevin Albert was sent to go knock, 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 knock. People are a little concerned that you're not checking in and you probably need to come back into the fold. So they're probably, maybe he was just a viewer. Maybe he watched what happened to John and didn't participate in what happened to John. That's what I'm wondering.